Good evening, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the Harvard Art Museums for this year's annual student lecture featuring the acclaimed artist Rosana Paulino. We are thrilled to have you with us for what promises to be a powerful and deeply enriching evening. My name is Madeline Murphy-Turner, and I serve as the Emily Rao Pulitzer Curatorial Fellow in Contemporary Drawings here at the Harvard Art Museums. I'm honored to represent the museums tonight and to co-present this program in collaboration with our valued partners at the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies. Before we begin, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to the many colleagues who made tonight's program possible: Ana Barros, Jen Thum, Tiana Fincher, Jean Burke, and Mitra Bospour from the Harvard Art Museums, Audrey Ray Smith, Renato Silva, and Luisa Bernardes from Mendez Wood, and Marcela Ramos and Sol Carbonell from the David Rockefeller Center. Their dedication and spirit has really brought this evening to life. Most importantly, I want to offer our deepest gratitude to Rosana Paulino, who joins us here tonight from São Paulo, Brazil. We are incredibly fortunate to have Rosana here with us in Cambridge during what has been really a whirlwind tour of the Northeast. Just last week, she gave a public talk at the High Line in New York City in conjunction with her striking mural, The Creation of the Creatures of Day and Night. And she also opened a stunning new exhibition at Mendez Wood Gallery in Tribeca. If you are headed to New York soon, I strongly encourage you to experience these groundbreaking projects firsthand. Rosana Paulino's work sits at the vital intersection of social, ethnic, and gender issues, with a focus on the lives and legacies of Black women in Brazilian society. Her practice confronts the structural violences of racism and the enduring impact of slavery, weaving together personal history and collective memory in a deeply reflective and transformative way. Through her investigation of myth, memory, and psychic imprint, Paulino reconstructs not just images, but entire frameworks of understanding, offering us new ways to see history, identity, and the body. Her work is fundamental to the story of Brazilian contemporary art and has redefined how we think about its social and aesthetic canon. In recent years, many of you may have encountered her work in major international exhibitions, such as the São Paulo Biennial, the Venice Biennale in 2022, the exhibition Afro-Atlantic Histories at the National Gallery of Art, and most recently, Project A Black Planet, the Art and Culture of Pan-Africa at the Art Institute of Chicago, which will travel to MALBA in Barcelona later this year. In 2024, alone, Rosana has been celebrated with major solo exhibitions at the Casa Museu Eva Klabin and the Museo de Arte Latinoamericano in Buenos Aires. In late 2024, she was also awarded the inaugural Artistic Freedom Prize by the Munch Museum in Oslo, honoring an artist who exemplifies courage and integrity in their practice. That recognition feels especially meaningful to us here at Harvard, as our current special exhibition is devoted to Edvard Munch, the very artist who inspired the award. To have both artists, Munch and Paulino, present here at the museums at this moment feels not only timely, but profoundly symbolic. We are experiencing a period in this country when artistic freedom is under substantial threat on many levels. Diverse perspectives are being silenced through the strategic termination of grants for scholars, artists, exhibitions, and museums. Rosana's practice has been dedicated to speaking out against such forms of institutional erasure. For this reason and many others, it is truly an honor to have her here. We are also proud to now include Rosana's work in our permanent collection at the Harvard Art Museums. Her evocative drawing from the Jatobá series is currently on view in Drawn to Earth, Contemporary Art and Environment in the Americas, our collection gallery installation in Gallery 1120 upstairs. Since the installation's opening last month, I've had the pleasure of discussing Rosana's work with students and visitors from Cambridge and far beyond, and witnessing its residence has really been one of the highlights of my career. As the curator Igor Simoes has observed, Rosana Paulino's work combines sheer beauty with a language of fury, criticism, faith, and politics, interrogating the living remains of colonialism and the mirage of progress in Latin America. Her practice is both a reckoning and a restoration, a challenge and a gift. With this in mind, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that Harvard University is located on the traditional and ancestral land of the Massachusetts, the original inhabitants of what is now known as Boston and Cambridge. I would like us all to pay respect to the people of the Massachusetts tribe, past and present, and honor the land itself, which remains sacred to the Massachusetts people. Following Rosana's lecture, we will be joined by Luci Williams, a second-year PhD student in the Department of History of Art and Architecture, and a graduate student teacher here at the museums. Luci's studies are animated by an interest in textiles, their design, production, and the lives of the people and animals that make them. Her research explores this in the context of Soviet Central Asia, probing how concepts of tradition, modernity, montage, and patchwork are inflected in the textiles of the region. Luci has been an incredible collaborator in shaping this program, and I'm so grateful for her thoughtful engagement and deep commitment to Rosana's work. We will conclude with time for audience questions, so I encourage you to hold your thoughts until the end of the program. And afterwards, I invite you all to join us upstairs in Gallery 1120 to view Rosana's work on view and drawn to earth, and to continue this conversation in the presence of her work. Please join me now in warmly welcoming our distinguished guest, Rosana Paulino.
Hello, everybody. It is an enormous honor to be here. And I'm very happy, of course, and I thank you for coming in this night with all this rain outside. So I really thank you for coming. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Harvard and the students for this invitation. So I will tell about my work, and after you can have time to questions, and we'll discuss this. And before I started to show the last researches that how you have here from Jatobá series, I would like to show my work in order that you can understand what drives me to do the researches that I am doing now. So I started to show some artworks. Here you can find this at my website, that is no necessary, and I start showing some images. I am from Brazil. I was born in 1967, and the country was facing, as it faced, the problems with racial issues. I am black. I was born in a black family. So to understand that, to understand my culture, I started to look around me. I started to think how my culture, how my family has made me, and look around. One thing that I really do in my research is looking around me. I can look at my environment, I can look for the animals, the things that has inside my home, to natural world. I really like to look around me in order to understand myself and my position in a society like the Brazilian society. And then this is, I consider this one my first artwork, the one that really opened the doors for this cultural environment. And this is the Wall of Memory, in Portuguese, Parede da Memória. It came from an object that had at the room in my parents' door, and it has a small shape that we call this in Portuguese patois. This is there to protect the house and the people that live inside the house. So it stayed above the door during 10 years or more. And you don't pass in a door that has an object without be touched by this. So I was very curious when I was a child what we have inside that. And I used this shape to do this using all the photographies of my family. And I made this like an enormous wall where I could see all my genetic pool there. I myself, I am not in this wall because it's not necessary. All my genetic is there. So the idea was to think how we can put this population together, and you can ignore one of them if you find in the crowd, but you can't ignore 1,500 pair of eyes on you. So this is the size of this work. We have 1,500 pieces, just 11 images. So it is like an enormous memory game. And you can see that sometimes they are together, we have images together. And I started the idea of putting things together and using the stitching to put them together, using the things that I knew about how to deal with this material. And for example, we have this other bastidores, this embroidery hoop that I use the images of my family, like this, for example. And on the line is something that is very important. In this case, I use this structure to show the violence that the black women are submitted in Brazil. So the eyes that can see, the mouths that can speak. Anyway, I use this that we can find in any home to show this kind of violence. But I can use the line, like in this case, for example, for stitching, or I can use the line like this in drawings. All my career, I draw a lot. I consider myself as a person that, an artist that has drawing as a main media. I will love drawing. So, as I told you, I can use some forms, I can find some objects that I can find at home. And in this case, for example, I used it to observe spider nets, cocoons, that I found at my home, at my environment, and using this in a metaphorical way to discuss what it is to be a female in a world dominated by males. So you can see like this threads, this line is coming from the eyes, from the mouth, and I can deal one aspect that I think that is interesting is that I can deal with this in different ways. I can start like this, making these drawings, and going for this, for example, where I made these small sculptures, these small cocoons. I show you like this so you can see better. And here you really can see the detail. As an artist, I think that is important that I can dealing with an idea in a very different ways. So I am dealing with this idea of cocoons like protection, but like something that can maintain you inside. You think that you are protected, but sometimes you are not. It can be a trap. It can be a place, a cocoon can be a place that it can maintain you safe, but it can be also a trap. You can be trapped inside the home. You can be trapped inside your world. So I'm using this idea, and the idea of to put together the human being and the animals as part of the same structure, for me it's very important, because one thing that really make me crazy is to think how in the Western world we think that the human being is here and the nature is here. That's not. That's the opposite. The nature is here. If nature do like this, we just disappear. So it is very, for me, it is very arrogant. This idea that human being is special and over the nature. So I started to put this together in some artworks, um, the human body and the bodies and the things that I can find in the nature. I was very interested in science. And so this is a way also to play with some ideas about science and about how the Western world see the things, the human being, and the others, and the animals and the plants. But at the same time, my interest in science directed my research to another field that was to think how science built a country like Brazil, and how science and false science is still in that society till today. So I can use science in very different ways. Now in this case, I started to use some images as well. I started using photography images, but for my family. But in a moment, I realized that it was not possible just to use my family memories to discuss the Brazilian society. So I started to looking for photographies of blacks in the Brazilian history. And I found one photography that was made, and the archive is here in Harvard, that photographies from the Agassiz expedition to Brazil. In Brazil, he called for a photography that is his name is Augusto Stahl, and he took some photos in Rio de Janeiro, like this one that you can see the bag front and side, and this pose was invented in Rio de Janeiro in 1865. And it's interesting to think how it has marked the history of the world, not only Brazilian history, but this is used till today in some security units to register the people. So we have this, and I started to think how images, how this false science that we had in Brazil, has it marked the black population there, has it made a spot on blacks in Brazil. So I made this work that's called the settlement, where I choose the photos, the images from Agassiz, and use the images to make an environment where we had these armies, we had tablets with the images of the sea and the sound of the sea, and that images from black side and front. I was thinking about the crossing the sea, how it was made, and how these people crossed the sea and survived and made a culture in a country like Brazil. So I used it like this. This is the image. I took the image from a book. The original size was 11 centimeters, very small, and I love technology. And I called a friend of mine so we could use technology to make the image larger. In order to make this work, you have to look at that the year is 2013. We don't have this technology as we have today. Now I can just use a cell phone, took the photo, and I have this in very good quality. But in 2013 was not like exactly like this. We had to work on this image, and the idea is to think about it, to rebuild yourself. And I like to work as well, thinking about the homeopathy, where the equal can cure equal. So to think about the damage caused by the images in the Brazilian black population, could it be a good idea to use the same images but changing the key? So these images that were in a situation of vulnerability, despair, now I am changing this. I gave it to her a herb. And in this case, for example, I gave to her a fetus. But we can realize that we have this stitching. In this case, you call this suture. This, if we look at the arm, for example, we can see that the parts of the body does not fit. It is impossible to fit because this is the trauma. This is the trauma of the slavery. How is it possible to cure this trauma? It's a question that I ask myself every day. How can we cure this trauma? So this image does not fit. And I call this like sutures, like in surgery, for example. I use this very heavy line, black line has a surgery line, but at the same time, this what I gave her roots, because these people um, could, they were able to make a country. Even with all this suffering, they make a very powerful culture in a country, as Brazil is until today. And I like to change, use the same image, for example, to think in different ways. How can I use this in ecology, for example? How can I use this in different ways? And ever using these ideas of science, thinking about the scientists that went to the country and mapping people, mapping nature, mapping all these species in order to exploit their resources, the resources of the country, of the people. So I made this like the Doctors of Eve. This is a mixed media on paper, and then I made also Adam and Eve. It's a series that has more, maybe 20 pieces or more or less this. And I carry on this idea to research false science or pseudoscience and how it has built Brazil in this book that's called The Natural History. But we can see that this natural history has two commas, like in Spanish language. Because is this natural, really natural? Is science really a free kind of knowledge? Is this history natural? I don't think so. We have a lot of politics. We have false science. We have a very bad way to use science. So this natural history, these two commas, and this is the opening page of the book. I would like to have a book very precious, something as they used to make to send to Europe, to send the ideas from Disney World to Europe. So I made this. It opens with these phrases. Em português, o progresso das nações, a salvação das almas, o amor pela ciência. That means the progress of the nations, the salvation of the souls, the love for the science. And here the flora, the fauna, and the people. And also discussing in this book for how nature was used, how image was used, how photography was used to mapping and to make a kind of to justify a false supremacist, a false hierarchy between people. And I like this. I use in this book this idea to have some images, and I can open this and I can hide this. In this case, we have, for example, this map of the world. For the first time, the human being was able to mapping the world and put these ideas and images. But this nature started as a technology, very useful technology, ended like this. So I can hide and show these images, these ideas. And after this, I carry on doing this discussion about science, and I use some phrases that I started in the book, like this, a salvação das almas, the salvation of the souls, or like this, untitled, giving again the hurt for a black woman, or this tropical paradise. as well. If you can, I am going a little fast, but if you are interested, you can go to my website and you'll find all these images there. Okay, and I'm ever discussing how the country was made using the ideas of science. And this red Atlantic, for example, and this I like very much because we have some images, not from Brazil but from Cuba, and nobody can say what is Cuba, what is Brazil, because the black people were portrayed exactly at the same time. So here, for example, this the permanence of structures to deal with this idea of how things does not change, how they are still there all the time, repeating, repeating, repeating. And then we have these images as well that the video, the grandmas, where I use the images of the old ladies from the slavery period in a performer, Charlene, stitch them on their body, bringing back these females for life. This is very interesting because these images they were printed in transparent cloth, so you can't see the image. You just can see the image when Charlene put this on her body. So Charlene does exist because these females exist before Charlene, and they come back to life because Charlene does exist. So it's to think about time in a in circular way, in a different way. That is very common for some people that came from Africa and are still in Brazil having this kind of culture and ideas about time. And just to add, I am interested as well about the commerce and the science and how these people were, this Africa and Brazil and all South America were exploited. So I made this installation, The Time of Things, where I used the some special speciarias. I forgot the name. Spices that started the idea of colonization and how it started with like a global commerce and ended having human being as the main thing to be exported. You know, like it changed. One idea that could put the world together ended in slavery. And the first time we had this kind of slavery that was we ever have slavery in the history of the world, but it was if you are don't have to pay money to pay, you know, this kind of stuff. But for the first time we have slavery that was based on the color of the skin and the phenotype of the people. And it changed and molded the world as we have until today. This is basis for this kind of racism that we have until today. So we have this. But I was thinking this kind of research, and I started to think about the black female psychology. And I was thinking about a trend that we had some years ago about the goddesses, the power of feminine, you know. And when we think about this, I started a research and I went to the libraries and we could find the idea of goddesses for the female power. But in these books, we never, in Brazil, we never find, when I started this research, black goddesses. It was like the black female has no right to be, to have a power or to have a psychology. And when I am dealing with ideas like psychology, for example, I prefer to use drawing. When I am researching about something very specific, like for science, I go to the photography, for example. But when I'm dealing with this subject that is quite difficult, you can't put your hands on psychology. When I'm dealing with this kind of thing, I use drawing. And for me, it is easier to use drawing to discuss this kind of stuff. Because my mind, I don't know how to explain it. It's hard, but it's like to be free to be guided by your mind, your hand. Of course, I make a lot of study, a lot of research. But when you are drawing, for example, it's like you lose yourself in the drawing. So you can be free to use the drawing, something that when I discuss about science, I can't do. So I started to think about the black female personality in Brazil, and I started to think about a goddess that is very powerful, that is called the Yansan, an Orisha, in Brazil. And she's so powerful that she's compared as a buffalo. And people say that she is strong as a buffalo, but she's delicate as a butterfly. And I think that's so powerful to describe all this strength that this Orisha has. And I started to make some drawings thinking about personality, about psychology, and I started with this buffalo. We have other here. And then this made me think about the nature and the different phases of the female, for example, to be young, to get old, to be mother. And I started to use the drawing and the leaves and the plants. So I started this series that's called Lady of Plants, Senhora das Plantas. And we have one here and another here. And, but I realized that that was not good. That I had to have a plant, but not any plant, not any leaf. And I started to put more attention that plant that was close to me and the relationship that these plants had with the Brazilian Afro religion, for example, or that were close to me in a park where I used to go to walk, for example. And I went to walk in a park close to my home that where we have a plant, a tree, a special tree, a jatobá, this tree that's called jatobá, that is almost 500 years old. Can you imagine what is to be close to a being, a live being that is almost 500 years old? I was so impressed by this jatobá that I started to make this series of jatobás 3. And the one thing that is interesting is that when I'm working, for example, with different plants, which one has her personality. So the jatobás, for me, they're looking, they're like the enormous grandma. They have something that is heavy, but it's calm as well. It's like to be wise. They have their time. They are very slow. And normally I don't have the control. I just start to drawing, and the result is something that I really can't control. The result just appear. So if you compare, for example, the jatobá, I will be back. Like these, we say that they are younger, for example. They are different. I mean, for me, I feel them like different. And then so we have this, and then we have jatobás, and after I show you what we have here. And sometimes I make the drawings and I stop when I have a different idea or when I have an exhibition like a Bienal. A Biennale, we need to put much attention, make a lot of effort, for example. And when I was called to go to São Paulo Bienal, I made started to make another series of females that are the Mangrove series, that is 2023. One thing that I like to say about the drawing is that I really enjoy drawing. I don't make, for example, if I have to make a large drawing, I don't like, for example, to make a small drawing and project the image on the wall and then go, to just to put the lines that were projected on the wall. I don't like to work like this. I like to really feel myself, feel my body close to the paper. it's like to get a kind of energy that these females can give to me. I mean, when you do a normal drawing, and the result was this. When you do an enormous drawing, you have to feel your body. You have to stay close, so you can put in a kind of energy in that work that you are doing. So we have this room, the room that I occupied in São Paulo Bienal. We had 4 triptychs. The one that I was working is this, Garça Branca, White Hero. This, you can have an idea. This is the guys putting them on the wall, so you can see that they are really large artworks, and I made them direct on the wall. I just put the paper the same size on the wall, and then stay working, and that's very difficult. You can believe that's very difficult, because when I finished the drawing, I was completely exhausted. It's like to be in a fight, because I had to go on a platform, go up and down, and then see see the drawing from a distance, come back to the work, do that again. It's a lot of effort, but I think that is necessary to get the result that that I was looking for. And in this case, it's another kind of environment. And I started to realize more and more that the work has a kind of free will. He was going to a direction that I did not intend it when I started this research about the black females and the black psychology. It's like that they have a free will. They directed me to do that. So the nature started to appear more and more and more in the drawings. And after this, I come back to the series of Jatobás. Because these mangrove ladies, they are so large that I can't do this in small size. For me, it's very difficult to try to put these mangroves in a small paper. So I do the mangrove series at minimum 2 meters high, no less than this. Because they need a lot of space. So when I'm doing, I want to come back to this idea of plants, but I don't have all this space. I come back to old ideas, so I come back to Jatobás again, and this one is the Jatobá that you have here at the gallery. And this, I like this very much, because you can see these small trees coming from this jatobá. When I saw for the first time this tree close to my home, I thought, wow, this tree is almost 500 years old, but it is not so large. The trunk was not something, as you can imagine, for a tree that is 500 years old. So I realized that we had one jatobá here, and another there, and another there, and another there, and all the same, it came from the same root. So in this case, this tree, it's not, the trunk is not large, but we have other trees that came from the same, and the root is the same. So it's the same tree. That we can have an adult tree here and there. So we have the main tree and 4 trees more on aside them. And this is just the same. And also I try to show this coming from here, working on these species, these small trees that's coming from her. But at the same time, we have on her hand this small jatobá coming, to resemble that one that is growing that I saw. And we have a pomegranate in her hand. So I started to make jatobás, but they start to become another thing. And so I use things that I have close to me. I have a pomegranate tree at my home, these bromelias from Harvard. I love bromelias. They are from Mata Atlântica, Brazil. That's a biome that is very important. So I use a lot this idea of bromelias doing this series, and I made this series at the same time that I was doing this one that is the twins, the gêmeas in Portuguese. So you can see that when it is really large, I don't like. It's impossible to work in a small size, and I work direct on the wall. So as it is a diptych, I put one to have like a guide to see the colors, and I was working in the other together. I work together the two different parts of the diptych. And so to have an idea, my assistant Ricardo is up a platform cleaning them before get out from the wall. And just to finish, I will show this that was an enormous challenge. That was the High Line project because it is a mural. The first time that I was invited to make an art public this size, it's enormous. Of course, in this case, that's not possible to have the paper. And so I decided to make a graffiti direct using this method to going direct to the wall. I made them a large paper so it could be easy for me. A detail from the original drawing. And after we took photos of this drawing, the original drawing, and my assistant we received some images from Highline, and we did this using computer graphic to have an idea of how could be the result. So it's important to think about this kind of challenges as well. How can we use technology in this case? Because I use watercolor a lot. In the Jatobá, we have what you see when you go to the gallery. You see that points of ink. I use it a lot. Dropping some ink in humid paper, so the color, the ink just spread. But it's a mural. How can I do that? So we had to think how to resolve this challenge. So the idea was to have this. And one thing that is important to say is that the overall murals, that was the group that worked on the mural in High Line, they painted by hand. When they told me this, oh my God, they are crazy. They painted by hand. It's something absolutely fantastic. So we had, how will you do that? Spots of color, different colors, as we have in watercolor, or when I have the triptychs or diptychs that are enormous, but I use a kind acrylic ink that is liquid. So the result is very similar to watercolor, but not in this case. That was impossible. So what my assistant made, here they are painting, we just make like a map. You can see all that lines are like map of different colors. And we used the scale, that international scale for color. So we sent it today all that map is paired by colors. So they were painted by hand, each part of this. It's a work that's fantastic. They were painting part by part in order to, when we see this from a distance, it looks like an enormous watercolor. So here they were working, and you can see the colors are merging. For example, we have a contrast here. That is because the photo, when we see really the panel, the contrast is not so high. And then this is the end, the final panel that is 9 meters, and so it's really enormous. a building, it's a lateral way of a building. So it's the normals and was a challenge. That's fantastic. But anyway, you could realize that I'm dealing with the same substance. I am dealing with the same idea. I am dealing with the same subject. What is to be black, what's to be a black woman in a country like Brazil. Sometimes I will choose some materials that I think that are more adequate to discuss some subjects, for example, photography, when I dealing with the racism and how science, what was the role played by science in the construction of racism in my country. But when I am dealing with ideas and something more like psychology, that's not so hard, I will use drawing. And this is my practice. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for coming, and you can find more information here.
I want to thank you again for such a fast-paced but like broad sweeping account of your practice. I think it really comes across your experience as a teacher and as a researcher, which at Harvard Art Museums I think is an important sort of touch point. I would love to hear you talk more about the spiritual and the mythological perspectives in your work, especially in the Jatobá series. Your drawing on View Upstairs is really complex in how it thinks about the relationship between people and the forests. And in your presentation, you liken the Jatobás to grandmas, which is so beautiful and poetic as a woman-plant hybrid. For many worldviews, including Afro-diasporic traditions, the connection between the human and the forest is deeply spiritual. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the drawings from the Jatobá series make me think of the Greek myth of Daphne and Apollo, where Daphne flees from Apollo and calls upon her father, the river god, to help. And he transforms her into a tree to protect her from Apollo's advances. Can you tell us a bit more about how you're representing and combining different mythologies and spiritual worldviews in your work?
Mm-hmm. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, yeah. Well, I came from a culture, for example, that we have an enormous respect for nature. And we believe that we have some energies as well that are in the nature and that they are very important for life. So this respect, for example, if you go to take leaves from a plant, for example, to make a remedy for you or to looking for a cure, you have to ask permission. You can't just arrive in the tree and you take the leaves. You have to ask permission for doing that. So since I was a child, I learned that we are not above the nature. We are part of the nature. And so if I am part of the nature, how could it be to become a tree, to be like a tree, or to stay so immersed in the forest and the nature that I myself are part of that environment, part of that ecosystem. And then this for me is something that's calling my attention. Each day I am thinking more about this, that if the human being put himself, herself inside the nature, has another being, not like to be here. And how this kind of knowledge that came from native people, from black people, from people that lives inside the forest, maybe they have the key, if possible, if it is still possible, to change this climate change that we are facing. Because the human being will disappear. The forest will not. Some animals you stay here. But as I told you, if the nature do this, we just disappear. we just disappear. So the best thing for me to think about my psychology and the psychology of blacks, for example, in my case, in the black females, was thinking them together with nature. But at the same time, I like the symbolic in arts. I started since I started my career, for example, when I showed to you that the females, cocoons, as females, that was about a beetle that I found in my studio. I found the beetle and oh my God, this is so fantastic structure that can protect this, that can protect the animal. How is it? How is this thing that protects and can be a trap? Or the spiders, for example, that has the net, and I was thinking about some mothers that can make that kind of cocoon that can make their children so fragile. So we have a lot of things when we think about symbolic, about the metaphors with the animals and the forest, and and different people has the same. We thought about Daphne and Paul about this idea that she became in a tree. But we have lots of different mythologies where we have the trees that are like the human beings, the tree that can talk, or the tree that when you cut run blood. We have lots of histories about this. And also for me it's logical, for me it looks logical to put together these ideas that came from different perspectives and to start to think more about how we are part of the nature. We are not above the nature. And maybe we can still save the human life if we accept this.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Building on that question, mentioning Daphne and Apollo, as you did, Luci, and then also these, the way that you're thinking about women in relationship to nature from kind of other spiritualities and other mythological places, I'm made to think about artistic formation and your studies, perhaps, as a young art student, because in a context like the Northeast of the United States, in a Western context, I would say, like, Daphne and Apollo, Greek mythology is so central to what we're seeing as we're studying art. So I'd like to hear more about what you were seeing as you were studying art, what you were thinking about. And I've in other contexts heard you talk about really the lack of representation of Black artists as you were really coming into your own as a young artist. And of course, in the context of Brazil, if we think about like the dominance of concrete geometric abstraction, kind of how could we forget about that? Just kind of give us a sense of what that was like for you as you were really seeing art for the first time and forming your own vision.
Well, that was very hard. That was not easy because we must realize that I started studying almost 40 years ago. I am an artist now for more or less more than 30 years, like artist. And that age, we did not have internet. We did not have this kind of discussion that I could see artists from Black diaspora, for example. And so at that time, until today, the Brazilian universities, when we are talking about art, they are very Western. And sometimes I think that they think they are more Westerners than, the Western. And that was really difficult because I could not see myself inside the university. And I could not see the group that I came from inside the university. And then that was very violent. I remember that when I started as a student, for example, in my first year, my first week as a student, a teacher just told it to the group, you forget everything about the things that have done until now because you will be artists that are in university, you will be how can I say, eruditos?
Educated.
Sorry?
Educated?
Educated, much.
Erudite.
Sorry?
Erudite.
Like intellectual.
Intellectual, yes, intellectual artists. So it was the first week of classes. And, you be educated, you be artists from the university. And I just, I remember I told myself, okay, what can I do this? Are you just take off my skin and I put this outside the room, the classroom? So that was really difficult to deal with this in Brazil. And then we had all this idea about geometry, about Brazil has like a vocation for geometry. That's not, absolutely. Absolutely. That was a very small group. And richest part of the country, that was in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. How so a small group can represent a country so large as Brazil is. That is madness. And another thing that I did not told you, that's about carnival, about escolas de samba. So all that visuality from escolas de samba, for me, that is very important. I remember when I was a child, for example, I went to my grandma's house, because they have a place, a home, quite close to her, that they used to make the clothes for the carnival parade. So and all the things for the carnival parade. So when they started to take this from the house, from inside the house, to put in the cars to go to the parade, all the children waited to see that. Oh my God, that for me was something really fantastic. So I realized that if I really could be an artist or make something really useful, I have had to use all this material. So I think that that was not easy for me, but I think that was not easy for the teachers as well, because it was all the time. But they encouraged me. Some teachers encouraged me to look for this and say, okay, you really have to go and look for who you are. And I was the only black woman in the university in my classes, my art classes. I studied at University of São Paulo, Universidade de São Paulo, that is considered the best one in the country. And sometimes some courses that are considered the best in Latin America. So it's very elite university. So that was not easy, but I think that I has no choice.
Yeah.
What could I do? And so I started really to think. So the memory wall, for example, and that I consider my first artwork. I was a student. It was a way even to survive, maybe looking for my house, to stay at my home, but not like a trap. I think not like a trap, but like a place that could give strength to look at this and to start to really make things that that had value for me, not for the university.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
Speaking of the universe, and we don't have to stay on the jatobá, but you use specific trees, plants, and animals. There's jatobá, there's the mangroves. Yeah, that's great. And in your talk, and also in our conversation now, you brought up climate change and how the climate change is sort of the symptom of mankind, humans, putting themselves above nature and not seeing the interrelationship, sort of the hybridity, if you will, between humans and nature, and how we're formed by nature and sort of informing nature at the same time. Given the climate change and the related sort of ecological consequences, I'm thinking in Brazil, deforestation specifically, you mentioned a particular sort of intervention or cure or path forward being humans going back into nature, back into the forest. What are some ways that, in your opinion, if nature is all around us and we're a part of nature, what are some other ways besides the forest that we can see these relationships in our lives?
Oh, I think that we can listen the ones that live there. This is the first thing. I am not romantic. Of course, I love technology. I use the technology all the time in my artwork. But when we see, for example, the youngers that live close to the rivers in Brazil, the people that we call the ribeirinhos, that are kind of culture formed in great part for black or native people that live in and they have their life directly linked to the river, or the younger native people. They use technology a lot, but they don't destroy. They understand that we can put things together. So I think the best way to come back to the forest is listing the one that live there and that know how to do this. They preserve, they live inside and they can use the technology, preserve the nature, and they still there. They are living well with that environment. So we have just to come back to listen this. And I think that in Brazil, for example, it's very difficult for people to accept this, that we have to listen the one that has this kind of experience because they are considered like primitive, ignorant, but they use technology very well. They know and they learn very quickly how to deal with this. So I think that they have the key. To survive. They have the key, because if we carry on in this idea that the nature is something that can be exploited, as we are doing now, we don't have much time.
Yeah. Maybe we should see if there's questions from the audience.
Yes, if somebody has a question.
I think we could keep asking you a ton of questions, but why don't we let
Now we have there.
Aaron, would you like? Yeah, let's wait for the microphone quickly, because just for the recording, if you don't mind.
Okay, can you hear me? You can. Thank you so much for your talk, and thank you for coordinating all of this. I'm excited to see the show with your work on view. I had a question. It was really interesting seeing you and hearing you talk about these works in connection with your earlier practice, because hearing you talk about the tree and this idea of the tree being there for 500 years and how that's so inspiring was making me think about how nature is an archive, and thinking about it after having just seen the photographs as an archive, and how this idea of nature, we don't think about nature as being this, archive with a capital A. And then thinking about your interventions into that archive through your embodied sewing and this very physical action. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the relationship between those earlier pieces and what you're doing now with these drawings.
Okay. We can see, for example, when I told you about that work that we have the female in front, back, and side. The last one, he has the roots. So the idea of roots, we can even see. Let's see. We see the nature. We see in this case. We see in the collages, for example, the image of the plants. We can see the roots. We can see the ideas of bones, and even when I use the archive, you can realize the archive in good time. We have together with the archive the nature, because for me, as I see nature and human beings as the same part, in thinking about the Brazil, especially. We think about how I think about us, the blacks, the nature, the native people, all they were there to be exploited. So, in a way, they are at the same level. This problem about not to be inside the nature or not to be at this level is not a problem for these people. This is a problem for the white people that exploited the country. So for me to think, even to think the archive, I am thinking about a special kind of archive. I'm not using any archive. I am using this. May I? Let's see. Thank you. I am using. Oh, sorry. This archive that has the human body, but it has this plant that is coming from her back like a column on the vertebral column. So here we can find still this idea about nature. And we have others, for example, and here, and here. So all the time, these people, the blacks, the indigenous, are putting the nature as at the same level, thinking that we consider the nature as the same level for us. And this is a kind of rebellion, or a kind of to face the system as well. This is not, I use it like this, it's not just because it's beautiful, but it's because it's to say, okay, look at this is possible. So, but when this, for example, is a good, when I put it like this, the flora, the fauna, and the people. So are they all the same level? I can't think the human being without think about nature, look like this. But when I'm thinking about psychology, for example, I don't like to use, it's very difficult to use images of thinking about the psychology, about the intimacy, about the things that are inside me or inside the black females using photography or using archive images, for example. I feel free, I think that it's easier to do this using drawing. So I think that if we have a relation is that we are discussing the same thing. We are discussing in a case how the body, how the color of the skin was used to dominate the group. But what about the psychology of this group? In order to do this, for me it is easier working using drawing. So the images of plants that I had, for example, from archives, I will do it myself. I will draw it. Mm-hmm. And doing this, it is easier to put my inner visions on the paper. We have a lot of unconscious as well. So in order to liberate these unconscious, I have to make myself free and, for me, it's possible to achieve this only using drawing.
Lola, we have a question here.
Hello, thank you for the talk. It's been really great so far. You were just talking about how you use photography when you are, looking at, documentation, archival images, or things like that. And then you mentioned psychology, you use drawing. I'm curious about the sculptural work that you showed. Is there a specific way that you approach that as well, or is it sort of a combination of both? Like in the installation with the ceramic pieces.
Installation.
Yeah, and with the ceramic pieces as well, like the terracotta. I'm just curious how you think about, or how you approach the sculptural work.
Mm-hmm. In this case, it's not really about the sculpture, but to put things together, it's easier. And I was thinking about the history of the colonization of South America and Brazil and Africa. But when I think really about the sculpture, like in the beginning, for example, I think that in the beginning that we have the sculpture.
No, we're going forward.
More. Like this, for example. I was thinking about that images that after became the women tree. So this idea of hybrid is still present. And one thing that I do love is clay. Clay is absolutely fantastic because I have to put my hands there, in the feel. I think that some materials, they are better than others to discuss some questions. The clay, for example, is something warm. I can put something like has life in clay. That's not like a marble, for example. And so this is a material that I can use to discuss about mythology, something that's symbolic, in my opinion, for me. It works for me. I think that clay works like the drawings, the same thing. I can liberate myself when I'm doing this. I feel myself free. I can use my hands. And at the same time, I like some materials, for example, like thread. That are a material that people don't put much attention, that is considered female material, and this is very old. It's 2003. It's more than 20 years ago. And so thread was not being used a lot in contemporary arts. That's undervaluated material. And I like to use these materials and give to him a kind of valorize them, make things valuable. And also use the thread as well. It's something that was very good for this kind of discussion. So I ever think which material will be better to discuss the question. The result that I can have with drawing absolutely will not be good, maybe for using, for discuss racism and false science. So I ever think about this. I have an idea, and then after is how I will work with this idea. This will not work on, for example, using these archives, or I have to use others. And I am all the time looking for the best material to translate an idea. And so it can be in sculpture or installations. I love installations because I can use a lot of different materials, for example, that feel myself completely free. That it works only for discuss some subjects, not others. Maybe I think I responded to you. It's okay.
Any other questions from the audience?
There.
Ana Maria.
Thank you so much. This is a wonderful talk, and thank you for making the work that you make and inspiring us. I want to follow on this thread, no pun intended, with the materiality of your work. I love the paradox that you use in terms of these images representing both protection and entrapment. And I was seeing that there is this very powerful, paradox in the use of some of the materials that you use, where you, for instance, the thread as being able to express both power and vulnerability at the same time. And I'm just wondering if you could reflect more or press more on this use of the materials to express an idea, because I think that you are actually teasing out these paradoxical states, right? Like power and vulnerability, or entrapment and protection. And it seems like something that is sort of a thread, a connective thread throughout your work. And I was wondering if it's something that you reflect on in terms of the materials.
Okay, about materials. Yeah, that's very important. Material is really, wow. How can I say? I feel the material. One thing that we can consider when we are making art is that art is not a science. It's not so rigid. I study a lot. We read books, we make researches, but sometimes when you are starting to really work, really to produce an artwork, you have to turn off this part of your mind, maybe that is linked with the research that you can find in books. And so you choose the material. Sometimes I put a lot of material sometimes on the table. And then sometimes this one. Don't ask me why. But sometimes it must be like this, this one. This one, that because this is important to liberate your unconscious, your mind. Some works, I really have to know how to deal with this. An example is the mural, because that had some specificities that I had to think about. How can I reproduce this? It will be in the weather, you're suffering with the weather, or others, for example, if they are very large and they have weight, they are very, I have to think about the weight, about the durability of the material, if the color will be okay, So one part is very rational. I have to even sometimes I have to call people. I call people to work with me to make a settlement. For example, we did not have technology good to start with an image like this and make that enormous, for example. So I had to call. Just one thing, because I remember one thing. To make this, I had to call a person from technology to work with me. And then the other one, for example, come back to the, please. We have a lot of technology on this artwork. This was really difficult because I wanted terracotta, I wanted ceramics, but I wanted exactly this color. So I love terracotta, and much of this is because I used to observe some insects at the yard of my parents, for example, and they make like towers of terracotta. So I like this, and I want to use this color. But terracotta is one of the ceramics that the weight is the most weighted, that is very weighted. So it was not possible to put all that pieces, the surveyor pieces of terracotta in a wall, because it will be very heavy, very, very heavy. So we had to go in a center specialized in ceramics in Brazil, that they use, that is very specialized, is one of the most specialized centers in ceramic. They deal with that superconductors. That superconductors for information, to look for a ceramic that was not so heavy, that it could be put on the wall. And they told me about this kind of porcelain that is very thin, but that was almost impossible to get this color in porcelain. Because any kind of ink that we put changed the color in a way that was impossible to get this. So we had to go in a place. I worked with an engineer and two specialists in ceramic mass, and one person specialized in to make the molds of ceramic to get this result. When we look at this, for example, it looks, okay, that's okay, ceramic must be terracotta, that's not terracotta. And then it was, we spent months looking for the solution. So, first of all, I think about what I want to discuss. And what I think, what I remember, for example, I want this color. I want this because I remember the animals, the insects inside these towers of earth. And then this for me was wonderful. And after we start to have the challenge, that's not possible to choose terracotta, so the work we start like this. And when we finish, it is like this, because you have to research a lot of different things. Even go to a center highly specialized in ceramic to get just the color. So the idea ever started. Sometimes I know about it. I like this. I want this because the color, or I want this because it gave to me a sense of family, for example. So I can use clothes, or I want something very violent, for example. And in the other, this like no. And like this, for example. I wanted to discuss the trauma. How can you represent the trauma? So I know that I wanted to deal with this, with the cloth, with the stitches. So I was thinking about, okay, a trauma is like a surgery sometimes. It can, you can live with the marks of a surgery. It can even save your life. But you still have that marks. So to discuss the trauma, I realized, okay, I will make like a suture. That's something that is very violent. And you can see that the body, the arms, it does not fit. That was the way to use the material to show that I was looking for. That was how to show a trauma, how to put a trauma in an artwork. But of course, I spent days and days and days and days thinking how to get this answer, how to show the trauma. And the trauma is something that sometimes is so small that we can't realize, like this that not fit. So small area, but the result is enormous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think something that's come out of this talk and our conversations earlier today when you arrived really is just how important the materiality is and how interconnected it is to your ideas. And I'm so happy to have these conversations because when my colleague Mitra and I first saw your drawing Chateauba, we were just immediately, there's so many ideas, but we were immediately drawn to the technical way that you were manipulating the watercolor and the graphite as we were talking about. So just really the deep way that you're thinking about technique and materials is just one of the many things that have come out during this day. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you all for joining us this evening. The galleries are open until 8:30, so I hope you'll, gallery 1120, I should say, so I hope you'll all go upstairs and see Rosana's beautiful, beautiful Chateauba drawing on view, and I hope we can continue the conversation in other forums soon. Thank you, Luci.
Thank you. Well, thank you.